This is a DeMarie Productions podcast.
You notice he says alpha every time he
Did
comes
I
over
see
to me?
Bill's name taken off the slate? Is it because he's doing a horrible job? Wow. Billiam.
What do you want to
This
talk
one's
about?
just the girls, just us.
Yes, just us.
I like when we get to do podcasts without a host because, you know, you're the one I want to talk to the most out of anybody when it comes to this stuff. When I listen to podcasts and it's like truly just two friends talking, those are some of the better ones.
You want to know more about those people?
Yeah, I don't always.
If you're doing it right.
Now that we're in this world as podcast people, I'm learning a lot. And like, it has only made me listen to more podcasts.
Can we start there?
Sure.
Let's start there. You're a podcaster now.
Yeah.
So what do you think about all this?
I'm into it.
Well, let's talk about our own experiences because I guarantee you your experience isn't my experience.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience, just nakedly.
Well, it's a lot of work.
Okay. Yeah.
I think like it's a
lot.
lot of work. There's easy parts to this, the ideating of what we're going to talk about. Like, I actually think that you and I could just sit down and start talking and we'll find it something interesting and entertaining enough to like listen to.
Right.
It's like, I'm not worried about the quality control of that side of things where it is anxiety and takes a little bit of effort scheduling, you know, where there's a team behind these cameras, there's audio and there's directors and there's, you know, social capture and
talent
there's
outreach.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then obviously we're going on, this will be podcast like 8 or 9 or something like that.
Yeah,
Within the first 10,
9.
like we've been, it's been manageable. I don't get anxiety. I'm like ready when I'm here. I'm like focused and interested to talk about the topics.
Yeah. So you're not anxious about the talking and what to say anymore or anything like that?
No, but I don't think I was from ever.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Anymore. I'm like, that was
gonna be
always
my
the part
next
to me that it
question.
was going to be the easiest thing.
Yeah. Okay.
What about
and
you?
how about your reception from friends and
What
fam?
reception?
Oh. Yeah, you're looking at it.
Bill's like, my friend said this. Bill likes to send me screen grabs of all of his friends being like, oh, you like, look at this kind of thing that this person said. I'm like, wow.
Just trying to make you feel better.
At least you have reception. My friends, like, it's notable who's watching, guys. I can tell.
Well, ironically, I haven't promoted it at all because I don't share the feelings of loving to see my own image and hear myself.
And I can respect that. I think it took me a second to adjust to your
reticence
of the pod, but I know that you enjoy doing this with me and that you're finding benefit and it's going to net out as a positive for both of us, hopefully, and creating more opportunities, networking better, all of that good stuff that will come from this. I also like to watch when we've got a guest and you're bantering, and I like seeing that side of your personality come out.
I like that part of it. Yeah, I mean, first of all, who doesn't want to be asked for their opinion on something? I think that's human nature, right? So even us shrinking violets don't mind that so much. I do have a little bit of a thing where like, does the world need fucking 2 more people talking into a goddamn microphone? I do have that feeling about it. So the only antidote I think I have to that is just to try to be a little bit valuable in the things that we say, rather than just like fucking bantering bullshit. You know what I mean? So hopefully we're doing that through the guests that we bring on and like the people that we're talking to and things that I never knew before I moved here and, you know, got in the industry and so forth. But yeah.
Have you learned something about me through this process that you did not know prior to being podcast co-host? Watch your words. It's pride. Watch your words.
That's right. It is pride.
Careful.
See, I would have said I'm the sensitive one and you're the like bull in a china shop with feelings and emotions and people's, you know, what general well-being.
A bull in a china shop when in regards to emotions, like I don't have control over them or my emotions swing wildly?
I think you have plenty of control. But like, you know, sometimes the way that you are like curt and brief with people is not the way that I would be necessarily.
No, you and I manage people very differently.
Yeah, we manage people totally differently. And that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, mine is better, but we don't have to define that.
Neither here nor there, even though yours is better. I think I never realized what a sensitive bitch you are.
In terms of like in a cool way, like in like, wow, you really care about people?
I'll give you an example. You want me to give you an example? You might have to cut this example. I'm going to give it anyway. Like 10 minutes ago, we were sitting on this couch and I made the mistake of saying the expression, the words spread too thin. And it is still in your brain right now because...
It's not right now because I got my full thought of what I was trying to say.
It also wasn't...
critique.
A critique or an accused.
No, I know.
An accusation.
Yeah.
Right? No, it was just like an observation of like, well, you have a lot of things going on at one time. Do you need to start another one before you've ended something? It was a question, right? I'm not a person that does well with like all the spinning plates.
Yeah. And in
like
that moment
focus.
that happened off camera, as they say, I didn't take it like as a critique. I just wanted to clarify my full thought about it, which is why I brought it back up to you.
Almost like a sensitive person would do.
No, because you know what it is? Sometimes how I think about something is too complicated that people are not interested in actually listening to me and understanding why I'm doing something. So I felt that. And that's not just me. I think that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So if I bring something back up again lately, it's because I'm trying to prove to myself, say that. Finish your thought. And if they're not interested or they misinterpret you after that, at least you got your full thought out of it.
Okay.
So it may come across as me being hypersensitive about something, but I think that it's actually an exercise of that I'm trying, whatever. I did not realize how insecure you are.
Oh, well, that's
man.
just because you never asked.
I had no idea. First of all, you're welcome. I'm giving you that chair in this setup because that is my angle and I love that side of my face and you have the better cut. And to realize like, you really are a shrinking violet in front of the camera.
Yeah, I don't like it.
But I'm like, you're so stinking cute. No, like, how would you not like?
It's just not my natural state. Even when we've done shoots together, right? In the end, you always grab the talent and you're always like, let's get a photo for the client with the talent, right? Like everybody gathered around Mindy Kaling or whatever. And I was always like, where the fuck can I hide right now? I don't need to be doing this.
I hate that.
It feels so thirsty.
You have reminded me how much self-judgment or self-insecurity does not serve anybody. Because there are times where I'm trying to get something done and I feel like because you're more sensitive about something that I'm like, okay, we need to do this. Like take promo photos or work on the poster or design. And you're like, well, I don't like any of the photos. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm hearing you talk about my good friend, Bill. I would never say that. Like,
not exactly. I say, look, there's none of these photos that's going to like wow me. So let's take the one that you feel best about. And then
well, what I do appreciate is that, you never actually say no. Like you're never like, and we're done,
All my shit is out there.
Yeah.
Right.
It is funny though, because I'm the one who's watching all the episodes down afterwards.
Yes.
And that only makes me want to double down and do this forever. Because if we were looking back and we were getting negative feedback outside, or if we were sitting here, we're both smart, hypercritical, creative people. I think that we know when something's good and just needs more time to like really be polished versus if this wasn't working out, we would be 6 episodes done and never do it again.
I think that's true. Although I think like a lot of people, I don't think I can accurately judge myself. So, I'll just continue to be self-critical.
10.
What I will say though, is in the affirmative, so I'm not sounding like such a pessimist, is there've been a lot of like nice texts and things from people that I, whose opinion I respect and admire and that seem to like find some value in all this. So here I am again.
And by watching other podcasts, I'm learning about other segments or structures.
Yeah.
And I am now looking at podcasts more critically. Like, for instance, if I watch a commercial, right, I'm immediately thinking like, how much was the budget? Who did they do? Who'd they get?
Yeah.
Like all that kind of stuff.
Strip away the illusion.
Now with the podcast, I'm like, hey, where'd they shoot this? What's their microphone setup? Like
how much prep went into this versus just like, what'd you do this weekend?
And some of my favorites, zero prep, the most shittiest done over Zoom, no budget, whatever.
Yeah.
I personally have standards and I like to think that don't you dare look around. This is the space that is available. We love this. Please do not shit on the studio that has been very kind to us.
I just really like that one cactus.
Here's the thing. They don't allow us to move things around.
I know.
Otherwise we would have Kate Martindale coming through and kill this. Yeah. Also, you don't want to have to store all the table and the couch and the chair and bring that in and prop this out the way that we would if
I don't think we could do this.
Have the time and the budget. Or one day when we have our own studio.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay.
The reason why we started the podcast, to let the audience in a little bit is because at the time we had like time on our hands. I think if it's okay to say, like found yourself like after being in a committed position with a company, and my commercial work has been so slow because of strikes this year that my antsiness took over and I was like, hey, I think I want to do a podcast.
Yeah.
Approached you and I was like, honest to God, I think that this will be so much better if it's us and banter and conversation rather than just a frank focused thing. And I was right. And anyway, that's how this idea came about. And since we have launched, it has been beautiful to create this platform, albeit growing, for the guests that we invite on. We're so grateful for the people that have come on to trust us and to have this conversation.
Yeah.
It's always an ask. But what's been fun too is like we're about to start getting into people that we've not worked with, people that we admire, that we have questions for, or, all of that. Like I'm excited about the future of what this project is. I think it's always nice to like stop, pause, check in and see how we're doing. I haven't heard that ever ever on a podcast before. So I'm curious how people listening will think about this episode.
Well, and I think, we talked a little bit in the beginning, like first episode about, who we are, our intros, where we came from, careers. We'll talk about that in a minute. But for me, there's also a much more immediate itch to scratch, which is this overused term is gaslighting, right? Everybody says gaslighting these days. But I feel like we talked about the economy, the strength of the economy, and yet there's these giant sectors of marketing and of my field that are being like just decimated. We talked about some of the creatives and our creative friends and partners who are, it's tougher for them to find gigs anymore and so forth. And so I just feel like that's not getting a lot of airtime. And I wanted to find out, first of all, if it's true or just my own anecdotal experience, having left brand X back in like late April or something, right? And the way that the environment is changing right now. I find all that very fascinating and not a lot of discussion about that. So I hope that for whatever that's worth, that we're uncovering some of that, if only for my own curiosities.
Yeah, there is something that is comforting when you're like, is this just happening to me, or is this an industry-wide thing? And I think it's very easy to remove your self-responsibility and say, no, this is happening in the industry. But actually, people can do things like start a podcast. You can do things to remain active. I think that, I don't know how you feel about this as more creative even than I am, of like, I need to get these ideas out of me to make room for the next. You talk about being spread too thin or being spread thin. If I don't execute on everything that I'm thinking about, then it all just stays up there. And one, that's a shame for the world to miss out on. But two, I want to make room for the new. If I keep thinking about the same ideas over and over and over again, and I don't get them out of the way, then how am I ever going to make room for a new idea to form?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point. I didn't really think of it from that respect, but so far so good. I've loved talking to all the guests on all these topics. I'm of the generation that I've lived through my very first years in work were the .com boom, right? Like 98, 99 was like my first year in the workforce, and internet sort of fell apart, right? And then 2007, 2008 with the housing crisis. Then there was COVID in 2020, which was like a mixed weird bag depending on what kind of brand you were working for at the time. And now here we are again at like a crossroads in 2024 of like, will some of these businesses survive? Some of the things that I've made a whole career on, will they even be there anymore? Or am I now at an age earlier than I thought, just looking at a pivot into different types of angles of my career? It's interesting.
The last thing I'll say about that before we kind of jump into what we want to talk about, which I think is about career paths and how people pivot the phases of a career path, is the fact that we have listeners is like really cool to me. And then I'm humbled by that. And I think we both share a sense of gratitude for anybody who listens to the pod or sends a kind remark or whatever. And then also a moment to remind everybody, like, it really does help if you guys can write a review or like and subscribe. I'm like, now that I'm in on the publishing side of all of this, like social clipping and the content stuff like that, I'm like, oh my God, the algorithm is like, yes, it does respond to people engaging with your content in a way that I've always obviously known. But now that we're collectively the product, you realize like, I hope it's not annoying, but like and subscribe, please. It's like, please. Yeah. That really goes a long way.
I'm far off from being able to say all those things just yet.
That's fine. I'll do that.
But it is funny.
It feels like an evolution of our friendship where it is like, okay, Bill's going to take care of that part. I'm going to take care of this part.
This is as real as my real marriage in that Abby knows everybody. We live in a building that's like 6 floors, I'd say 5 apartments per floor, right? So like 30 apartments, right? Yeah. All families, all kinds of people that have been there. It's not a building where people leave frequently. So they've been there forever. Abby knows every one of them. She knows the fucking names of their dogs. She knows, the twins on the 3rd floor. I'm like, I don't, when I'm letting somebody in the building, I have no idea if they're about to rob us of everything or if they live on the 2nd floor, next door to us. So that is not totally unique. I think I'm always sort of
well, then you better send Abby flowers every week if she's got to be putting up with you at that level.
Abby and Frank.
I'm so excited for her.
So let's talk about careers, like direction and choices and things. And I don't think we did a lot of this in the intros on yours, right? You want to start at the beginning of how you got into some of these things, decisions you had to make along the way?
Yeah, I was raised in Seattle. And then I moved here for college, dropped out within the first week. I moved here to be a Broadway legend. That lasted 1 week. And I was like, just kidding. I snuck into a Fashion Week show.
Of what year?
2007. So I moved here in August, and it was that September I
Bryant
snuck
Park?
into a fashion. Yes,
Bryant
baby.
Park? I was working that fashion week.
Were you?
Yes. We'll get to mine.
Okay, that's so fun. There is 2-second footage, a clip of me at the tail end of Project Runway, where you see me in full 2000 Frank drag, and I snuck into the Fashion Week show, so I was shocked that I got in. And then the fact that I got into the Project Runway, which was the biggest TV show at the time.
I know.
And I saw Heidi, and I saw the designers that I loved and watched all season. I was like, this is gaggy. And there's footage of me like waiting to get caught. Like that is the look on my face. Is I know that face, and that's me expecting fully to get caught. And then from there, I was like, I'm going to work in fashion. I went to FIT for a year, dropped out. But while I was there, I was studying fashion advertising. So that's kind of my first inkling into like advertising marketing.
Yeah.
I had internships. I had 4 different internships that year at FIT, and I was working everywhere from Elle Decor to in the archive closet. Then I was in Fine Art Scope Art Show, which is an art fair that they produce. I was an intern there managing the database.
FIT on 7th Avenue, 28th?
27th, yeah.
20th, yeah.
And then the last one that really pivoted me was I got picked up by True Productions, which I love Drew Linehan, who runs it. It's casting. He was the first person that I was like, oh my God, this is really fashion. Like this is, oh my God. Did a season with him, and he introduced me to his friend Michael, who I've mentioned on the pod before. And then I became like a paid assistant to actually like work in production. And so that gets you up to 19 years old.
How much of that was by design versus forks in the road, and you chose?
At that point, it was all luck. At that point, it was other people being so bold as to ask a girl in my PR class at FIT, like, I follow you on Instagram, or no, Instagram wasn't even a thing, Twitter, at Facebook. And I see that you did casting. What was that internship? Will you introduce me? And Jessica is her name. And she did. And, you don't realize like, oh, I'm just even sitting next to her, building that friendship. Like how much of that stuff is fate? The fact that I made the decision to move to New York is like the biggest blessing that I always say that I've given myself. We've talked about that before. I literally just clipped that in a previous episode, but it's true. Then once I got here, I feel like everything else is just luck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the point, especially on the point of the city, we agree. Like that's why my wife and I are going to great pains to keep raising our children here, right?
Yeah.
Because I want them to have the exposure to everything. My daughter riding the subway by herself and things like that, like walking to school by themselves, going to the bodega where she left our fucking credit card last night. I like that they're doing those things on their own in a way that, like, for me, it would have been like riding a bike around the block or something, so. That's
actually one of my biggest fears about, I want to raise kids in the city, and just knowing that it's completely 180 different than what I grew up with
totally.
Like a backyard and woods to play in and stuff like that. There's something about it that kind of terrifies me, but also then I see examples of like you and some other friends of mine that have done it.
It's very easy to call it, sort of an elitist helicopter approach. All I mean to say is that, like, for friends that we have that live in the burbs and live in neighborhoods, you see the same people. It's homogenized, right? And even where we live in Brooklyn, you see all kinds of people doing really well in life, doing not so well in life, and everything in between. And the ways that people use the park and all the myriad ways that we live across the street from, like, I'm glad they have that sort of tapestry to grow up under.
Totally.
Is the only point there.
So then just to wrap mine up, then I was working as an assistant and I was a PA. And then the agency that I was working at, Mycon, they represented artists or photographers, but then they also like ran the production for them. And so got to be on set, got to expose to all that. Really fascinated still with the casting background, but then realizing that agents were calling, asking about how valuable the models were worth to put stuff on their social media. And so the gay audacity in me was like, oh, I could solve this. And so I launched DeMarie Tech. And that was the first product that I had. That was 2011. And so I'd only been in the game for like a couple of years. And I just was exposed because by the grace of whatever, Michael was like, run. What do you want to do? Like, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And so anyway, launched that tech company. And then that's when I was really sunk my heels into the entrepreneurial thing. And with that company, I actually did do a full raising a round of capital, had advisors, all that kind of stuff. And in 2011, 2012, people were pitching pre-revenue. You could get something funded by an investor. Now that I don't think that's so much the trend, but at the time. And so raised a round of capital, did the tech thing, ran that for quite a while. And then over the years, opened up other projects because I realized, again, kind of like what CJ was saying on an earlier pod, like there's an umbrella, there's a universe, and like they don't all, a multidisciplinary and kind of approach to a career through talent agencies, creative consulting, production, there are multiple entities that I now run, and they all relate to each other, but they are different entities because they serve different purposes.
Yeah.
And then, I've just had a tremendous amount of luck and go at it. And I'm excited about all the
and now you have 100 different projects that are in and out of those.
But yes, I'm currently in a position in my career, on my career path, that is the most diverse, documentary features all the way to social media campaigns in terms of content production and representing certain people and managing social personalities and all that kind of stuff. It's there's definitely a lot that's going on, but I'm not stressed out.
Well, you're way, way further ahead in your career at your age than I was at your age.
So tell me, where were you at 35?
Well,
what was your path?
Well, at 35, where was I? I was working at Christie's. I had just gotten the job at Christie's.
Which is such a cool place to work at.
Super fucking cool. I mean, I thought I have many moments where you feel like you've arrived. It's only relative to the expectations you've set for yourself. And growing up where I did when I did and the way that I did not think I'd be wearing a suit to work and working at Rock Center and, walking the gallery and holding Basquiat and, just having that experience. Every 2 weeks I was in London because the other half of my team was over there. So this is pre-kids. I would do 2 weeks in New York, get on a plane, 2 weeks in London, so on and so forth, and back and forth. And what an experience that was, having a little man with a man with a little placard, at Heathrow with
Mr.
my
Weiss.
name on it. Yeah. And it was I'm getting picked up in a car.
Yeah.
That was a wholly new experience and very eye-opening to me. But where we crossed that we don't know to be factually true is 2006 to 2009, I worked for this jewelry company. I was a creative director for a jewelry company. That's where I met Jaime, who we'll talk about another time. And he and I, they were the official jeweler of Fashion Week. And so we went to every show and every event. We had to work.
You had one of the booths in the front lobby
There
areas?
There was a booth, and there were people that salespeople that occupied that space, showing off our wares, right?
Yeah.
Our job, if you can fucking believe it, was client relations.
Yeah.
So we would have these Richie Rich old women come in with their friends and ladies who lunch, and it'd be we need front row seats to, I don't know, Vera Wang or whatever, right? And it was okay, it was my job to take them there.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they thought, I don't know, get the creative kids to take these old ladies around or something. And so we did, and we would do that all the time.
That's so cool though.
Yeah, it was really weird, but you were probably there. You probably snuck in.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so Christie's into the jewelry art creative director, and then from where?
Other way around. So when I first moved to New York, it was to work for this jewelry company, and got a quick series of promotions into creative director, and then from there I went to Christie's.
Okay.
And Christie's was a whole new experience, whole new scale of company. International, 150-year-old company or something, just crazy. It was also during the Matt Lauer era, so every morning I would see the Today Show filming from my office over to the first meeting. 30 Rock would film back then in those days, and then from there I went to Chipotle. So I went from, suit and tie, living on the Upper East Side, going to Christie's every day, to now commuting by bike over the Williamsburg Bridge to get to Chipotle every day. Yeah, totally different. And at a time, the time at Chipotle in the beginning was all brand marketing, not even marketing, just a bunch of branded shit that was super cool and revelatory, done by the team and the agencies that worked with us. And then the second half of that was foodborne illness and how do we sell burritos, right? And the irony now that their stock is going to split again. They're just printing money over there. But it was a good time. It was a really, really interesting time that will never exist in this city again.
Why do you say that?
The group of people that led that team and the way that it was able to be led by that. And I say that complimentary to them. But it was almost like a insular, mom and pop shop for a huge domestic, global brand,
Totally.
So it was really interesting. But from Chipotle to DraftKings, I won't say too much about, other than it started with different designs, which is why I went there. And a bunch of the folks that I know and still talk to from there were of that recipe. Let's go be a sports marketing, sports entertainment. Let's build a brand here. A bunch of stuff happened and they decided not to do exactly that. So, I came back and ended up at HelloFresh.
Yeah.
HelloFresh leading big teams and on and on and on, till CMO status.
And where are you now?
Now I'm post CMO at a role. Again, I won't say the brand name, but a role that I left in April. And, we talked about experience a lot. It was because of that experience that I was able to leave that job, something that just my younger years, I would have been like, oh, I'm the problem. I need to like find my way through this. I need to just, it's through pure, like, what's the expression? Like elbow grease. I need to press harder, work harder, do more, stay longer. And it was because of the years of experience in between that I was like, I don't think I'm the problem here. And I don't think this is a good recipe for me personally.
Did you ever have any internships?
I was a teacher. So when I first started, I was a kindergarten teacher and special education.
Where was that in
teacher.
the lineup of the jobs?
I've been nonlinear, just like my career. When I was in college and graduated college, I was a teacher for 2 years.
Wow.
And I taught kindergarten from 8 a.m. until noon. And then I taught 18 to 21-year-old special needs from noon until 3 o'clock or whatever.
The reason why I ask is because I think like, we've talked to a few guests who have mentioned their internships and some of our more professional working people who maybe skipped college and went the internship route. And I think like in America right now, there's always been for the past couple decades, a big push for colleges. But I'm actually noticing this trend of like, skip it because it's a bunch of debt. And if you are hungry enough, there's so many more jobs that are available to people that don't require college degrees. Now, if you want to be a doctor, lawyer, somebody that's like, you got to study, yes, please, dear God, go to college and get those degrees. You'll have to be able to have a successful career. But I am noticing that there's like a trend with careers towards this freelance life.
Yeah.
My father had a career at a company 21 years. He stayed someplace. That is unheard of now for people that are around my age. They hop every 2 years, right? You hop to get a bump in title or a bump in pay. I'm just curious, like from your perspective, are you still in a career like a company man mentality, or are you excited about potentially being more freelance?
I'm neither. I'm not a company man mentality because I don't think it exists and I don't think the rewards are there. Even the nicest companies I've worked for, I was only as valuable to them as I was valuable in the moment. There wasn't like he can have a couple of down years. They've never been part of those, conversations or situations. At the same time, I don't think that the opposite is true either. I don't want to be hopping around all over the place. I don't think it's good for your career. I don't think it's good for learning to work through adversities, natural ones. Even if at the end of those adversities, you realize, look, I gave it my best shot and it's just not the right situation for me, them, us, right? Mm-hmm. Even that is really valuable and it takes time to find that out. So I think there's worthwhile in putting at least a few years into a place. And I wish in some of those instances I had been able to, Others, I think it's okay when something is wrong right from the beginning, just like a relationship. It's your life, you have limited time on this earth. Cut and run, man. Go do something else. As long as your life can afford it and everything. And I happen to have an amazing partner. I fostered an environment in which I follow what I care about, and that's only because, Abby is so understanding and all those things.
Well, it's so interesting because I think and again, this is kind of an American thing. First of all, presently, I love, I've got sisters that live in London and I've got friends that live in Europe, and the work ethic, the difference in work ethic with careers between us and other countries is wild to me. Yeah. I happen to prefer the American way of you work hard, to earn your spot. And especially living in the city, right? We live in a city where it's tough to be here. So if you don't have a focus and a determination, get the hell out of Dodge.
Everything is
it's not worth it. It's so hard to be successful here. But if you want to compete with the big boys, okay. I also just think we start talking about careers or what do I want to be when I grow up so young. I was pretty set on being an actor from the day that I was 5, 6, all the way till when I moved to New York at 18. I knew actor was that's what I wanted to do the entire time. And I was very consistent. Yeah. I even look back and I have cute little drawings of when I was a kid or poems that I would write about what I want to be when I grow up. The answer was always actor.
Yeah.
Now, I happen to do something adjacent to it, but I'm still very much in entertainment because when I was a kid, the idea of what a producer wasn't very clear to me. And so I pivoted to producer because I was oh, that's the person that's actually in charge and actually gets to make all the decisions. And if you are successful at your career in almost any way, you will have a certain amount of reputation and acclaim.
Right.
Actors get the most immediate response and applause and notoriety because of the nature of their job. I realized that my heart wasn't in the craft of it at the time. I mean, there's honestly, and we'll talk about alternative lives and what we might be doing if we weren't doing what we were doing, but there's still a world in which I end up dabbling in acting. And I that will shock the shit out of me just as much as everybody else. But lately that itch has kind of been back of being like, well, what if? Because I work with such great directors that I feel so comfortable around and so confident with, and I think do beautiful things with actors and get certain performances out of them. And I'm like,
could they do that with me?
Yeah, I wonder. We just put such a pressure on figuring it out and getting into the workforce so young. And it starts off with like children's books being like, I want to be a firefighter when I grow up, to like, but that's it. That is talking about being a future job.
Yeah.
Do you, as a dad who's got kids, how much are your kids who are ages
10 and 7.
How much are they talking about? Like, I want to be this when I grow up, or like, are they like, hey, I want to contribute to the family. I gotta go babysit. Like, what's the vibe when it comes to work with your kids?
No, it's not quite that yet. We don't have chimney sweeps
like,
at home. I've seen this through friends. I have one very dear friend who is the exact same age as me and just paid off like student debt, right? That is a heavy burden to live under for lots and lots and lots of years. And whether or not they got their money out of that acquisition, like, I don't know, you could probably still argue that, right? So I don't want to ever have that situation created for my kids, but I want them to be happy in what they do. Mm-hmm. It's like the sine wave of parenting, right? Like you get the parents that are crushing and over top, and then you get the Gen X parents that were all lenient and like, hey, here's a key to our house, come and go as you please, right? That was my generation. And you come back in and you're more involved in your kids' lives. And I think it just changes with generation. So for our kids, it's like, if they want to go be chefs or something, like a trade, if they want to go do that, I'm all for it.
With how much I've paid recently in home renovations, I would suggest they become tile people and being a specialist in learning it.
Tiling.
Pick up plumbing. Yeah. You know how much money that costs?
Yeah.
Like, everybody wants to be famous or a celebrity or an influencer. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. I think it's like such a trap, like to think that that's the only way to have happiness in your career. When you're younger, it's like you don't think about balance of family life and stability and the ability to save finances. Like, you're not thinking about that. You want what you see, and you see Hannah Montana. You know what I mean?
I'm also not a person that, I'm not a big believer in follow your passions. I don't. I think follow your strengths and your interests, because those will stay a lot longer. Like, my passions have changed time and time and time again, different chapters of my life, There was a time when I did nothing but cycling. Yeah. Like, I had a day job to afford all the gear and the trips that I was taking. Now I couldn't give a fuck about it.
But had you ever at that time thought about turning cycling into a career?
I did, and I was getting paid for it, not as a rider, but as a coach, and that was like, that's how I bought Abby's engagement ring, right? Like, I was doing 6 laps around Central Park every single morning from 5 a.m. Actually, more than that probably, but from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m.
Oh my God.
Coming home and showering and going to work for a day job, and then going back and doing it at nighttime too, So that was a passion then. But if I had made that my career, I obviously sort of outgrew that, or it outgrew me or whatever, Yeah. And so, no, I think what's much more relevant are things that I'm naturally good at and that I have an aptitude for. And so back to my kids, trying to find a career that they can do with the things that they're really good at.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
I think like my passion is business. Like, my passion is advertising and marketing. Yeah. Like, I'm genuinely scrolling on my feeds, like looking at the work that people are doing and admiring great photography, and I'm admiring strategy that pays off. That's such a passion of mine that it makes sense that I'm in this. And if I look back as a kid, honestly, I've always been a little bit of a shyster. I've always been a little bit of a salesman. Listen, in the 7th grade, remember in school when we used to have those like sell gift wrapping? In the 7th grade, no? Okay. Well, my generation will understand this. You would sell gift wrapping to raise money for your school or whatever it was.
Okay.
I assembled a team. I realized that, okay, if we wanted to get the lollipops and the big stuffed SpongeBob and the awards, and we wanted to get the win, this was what I was after, the win of the most sales in the entire school. I wanted that fucking title so bad. I wasn't going to do it by myself. We had to assemble a team, and then we can all divide the prizes. And what prize did I want? Let's put it under my name so that I can get recognized at the school assembly as the one with the most sales. And did it work? Absolutely. I've also like sold more Girl Scout cookies than my sister. I was always hustling if there was a hustling opportunity. So yes, it makes sense that I'm an entrepreneur. I think like looking back, nobody should be surprised.
Yeah, no. And I think it's also your aptitude, right? You were talking about being a producer versus being an actor. And like, you're very, very good at being a producer. I have no idea how you are as an actor other than like
I'm phenomenal.
This acting bullshit. But as a producer, are, time and action and getting everything where it needs to be and permitting for this and talent for that and the right crew. Like that's always been your specialty. That's how we came to know each other.
Well, that leads to like, you answer the question. When you look back as a kid, like do any of what you were naturally into, does that make sense for the career that you have now?
No. I think I have a very outlier sort of journey to where I am now. I never thought I would go to college. I never thought that I would leave home. And I thought if I was going to go to college at all, it would be on like a sport scholarship. And then I had like a weird turn of events in life and woke up one day with a brand new life, literally like a totally brand new life. So that second go at things means that all this is new, not that it doesn't come with expectation, but like all this is just kind of gravy from what I thought I'd be doing.
It's like funny because I think like also if you ask my family what I do, they're like, I don't know. I don't like, my family can't really explain what I do. Part of that is just because like from the tech company to creating films to now working on set with celebrity to managing talent, it's hard to keep up and I can understand that. Yeah. I kind of always hope that my career path doesn't seem chaotic to people. I hope that people, if you look at it, would understand, I could see why he naturally evolved into this, that, or the other.
Somebody that is going to look at your career needs to understand the linkages, to understand the path, right? And I don't expect that from a parent. Agnostic, your parent, my parent, any parent. I don't think they understand how one thing begat the next, right? It's just not traditional in their view of things. Right. As opposed to I signed on at General Motors and I worked my way up through this tiering of management or whatever, and I was on a manager track, and like that makes much more sense to somebody of that generation, right? And just like someday, generation beyond us will be like, I don't know, maybe not even associated. There'll be entities unto themselves being employed by brands, like kind of like is happening now. I don't understand that shit any better, right? I could not live like that.
Okay, if you weren't having the career that you have now.
Yeah.
Do you ever daydream or fantasize, like truly, like what would you do?
Not anymore. It's funny. I was going to ask you also, like, your thoughts and views of things. You're 13 years younger than me. Like, where do you see yourself at 49? But I'll answer your question first to say that not anymore. I think I've chosen my path and I like the path that I've chosen. I think it'll need to change with the times, as
for funsies. You don't have anything?
No, I like what I'm doing right now.
Wow,
what I'm trying to tell you, fucking nosy bitch, is that when I was younger, I would have gone into something more building related. I would have been like on the architecture side or manufacturing side. I love like homes, right? Like beautiful, beautiful homes. I always wanted to be an architect when I was a kid, and I like, drawing on graph paper and drawing like floor plans and schematics and shit. Yeah. And I think I probably could have learned to have an aptitude for something like that in a different life, but not in this one.
Cool. For me, it's a pop star. I would be a singer. I would be living my most Ariana Grande fantasy.
So if you weren't in East Williamsburg doing a podcast, you'd be famous.
Correct.
That's okay.
Or I would have the most mindless job on a conveyor belt. I would love to just have me, you, and a product that we are quality controlling, and we're shooting the shit, doing a mindless job. Clock in, clock out, no stress, no worries, bills paid, insurance provided.
Never.
Ooh, that is the dream, buddy. Never. I love mindless work. I love that shit.
You can't make it through one day in this studio without coming up with 4 new business ideas. You just pitched me 2 of them between the last, right? No, you would not work on some like
I'm not saying I wouldn't get fired right away, but I'm saying I would definitely
on the Pepsi bottling line or something.
Oh, I would love it. I would make sure that shit was uniform.
Famous, I could see. You wouldn't handle fame well though.
What? Get out of here. I already am. I think like kids, I think it's so fun to ask all the kids in my life, like, what do you want to be when you get older? A lot of them are so cute. They're like teachers. I hear teacher a lot. They all want to be teachers. And then I have some that are trade. I want to be a construction worker. I just want to work in the trade. And I'm like, I love that. I love hearing that welding.
I think that's the importance of exposure, is that kids want to be teachers in part because they see and identify and love their teachers, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they were around pediatricians all day, they might immediately be like, I want to take care of sick children,
Right.
So I think that's why exposure is so important to that. And then I think those tastes just get more sophisticated as they get older.
Are there jobs that you admire greatly? Like that you are like, ooh, that's impressive to me, the people that do that job.
Oh, for sure. I mean, teacher. Like I started as a teacher. I sit in these parent-teacher conferences now, which you would not know this, but as a Brooklyn dad, they never fucking talk to the dad. They talk to the mom, and like they'll draw an extra line on the paper for where you're supposed to sign the report card or whatever too, right? You're an absolute afterthought, maybe as you should be. But I look at them now and I don't want to be a teacher, but I have nothing but respect for these people. Like what they are put through. So once weekly, we get a note home that like, hey, we're all out of pencils. We're all out of computer paper. We're all out of crayons. Can you please send desperately? Like these people are doing God's work on a shoestring budget. So I don't want to be that. Let's not get it twisted, but I have amazing admiration for the groups that are doing that. It's just, they're the favorite people in my children's lives.
Yeah.
You know?
It's definitely got to be like teachers, nurses, like people who are working for other people so selflessly. I'm like, oh my God, like what is that life like? I don't have that calling.
It's also such a shitty, thankless time to be doing that sort of thing, you know, in the annals of history. So I have nothing but respect and admiration.
You know what other job I think I would like to do? Politics. I think I would absolutely love to be the mayor of New York City. I think I would kill it, to be honest. Not that we've had great ones so far.
No, I was going to say, not that you're going to do any worse than present and
screw it up further.
Company. That's very true.
But running the campaign,
I
making
think you would
deals.
fucking love politics. But can you imagine the Oppo research on you? Can you imagine the shit that would come out of the woodwork?
Brutal.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, I actually think like not as bad as most people.
Year 2022 to 2023 would end your carear immediately.
I moved to New York City as a gay kid at 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bring up that Craigslist search. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. But I also think like people, whatever. I mean, we saw Melania's twat. Like we can get over it. Like there are people.
Oh, Melania. Well, I wanted to ask you about like, you know, we're at opposite ends of the spectrum right now, right? Like I'm 49, fairly well established in what I've done. Not that you're not established, but let me finish this thought.
I wasn't going to jump in. I assure you. Oh my God,
totally. But you're 36 and sort of at like 35, sorry, at the beginning of the prime of your career.
You think so?
Yeah. So where do you think you'll be in 14 years from now? 14 years from now.
I will be running a full studio in somewhere in America.
First of all, New York will be underwater, so I hope it's on stilts.
No, Middle America, baby.
Middle America.
Yes, ever since we worked on that job in Akron, Ohio.
Yeah,
together,
you love it there?
That absolutely opened my eyes. Not that I love it there. Lovely town, lovely people. But there was so much talent between Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Columbus.
Yeah.
And they were hungry for work, and they were good people. And I was like, oh, I'm going to buy one of these old tire factories, reopen it, redesign it. It's going to have housing for, you know, hotel. It will have studio space. Like I'm going to Tyler Perry it. Like I want to open up a full studio.
So in the year 2025, let's say, right?
Next year.
Yeah. If you were Frank at 18 in the year 2025, there's some Frank out there at the age of 18 in next year, would you still move to New York? Would you still do it all over again?
1,000%.
You would.
Oh my God. Yes. Are you kidding? Like,
I'm not so sure. I would answer.
What's the other alternative?
Well, the alternative is to go somewhere else that is what, you know, New York used to be well before our time. You know, like famously the Lou Reeds of the world and the old school generation of the, you know, late 60s, early 70s into the 80s, where you could live in like a cold water flat for a couple $100 a month, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't exist in New York anymore. Everything is incredibly expensive.
Except for I live in a rent-stabilized apartment in the city. I still came when it was relatively affordable. Like it wasn't 2008. It wasn't 1980 prices, but it was 2007 is not bad compared to what it's become. But okay, I'll say this. So when I first got here, it felt like a personal renaissance because it was all new to me. And I was meeting people my age and we were going out and we were all artists or thinking about like careers and so fun and the energy of that. Then now I will say after COVID, there seems to be another renaissance that I've experienced where COVID cleared the cobwebs of the city. The people who were not really loving it and needed the space and the safety and didn't like the numbers, 500,000, 600,000 people fled. Okay, cool. That then opened up for a very short amount of time. Rates dropped on apartments. Artists flooded. I had like 6 different artists that moved here from Seattle, Florida, from all these different places, Michigan, that came to the city to live here and give it a go because they saw an opportunity. And there was for a second this glimmer of like, oh my God, we're going to get this. We're flush again with new creatives coming into the city. It's balanced. We've found a plateau with that. But I think like it's cyclical. All right. And I think like every time we get too high and mighty with the prices and kick all the creatives out, the city rebalances itself. I'm very optimistic about that.
I hope you're right about that, because I don't see that as being true. I see this as a one-directional. There wasn't a time when a lot of people lived in the city or owned apartments in the city but didn't live here. And you're right, like COVID shook off some of those vanity residents, either people that were like living in apartments funded by their parents who said, come home, no more bullshit, or people who were like, we need space, we're moving upstate, only to then try to come back like, a year or two later or something. I agree with that, but I think you also helped to prove that point a little bit in that the time directly after COVID, when this was an inexpensive place and it was like more of a buyer's market, a renter's market, you had an influx of all these new creatives who were like, oh, I can go to New York and I can afford to do it. And I can be, I don't know, struggling, whatever I am. I don't know that that's still the case right now. I don't know that that's different from Akron or Philadelphia or parts of Miami or, I don't know, Portland, Seattle, Austin.
Interesting. As you're talking about that, I'm thinking to myself, like in my friend group, I don't have a lot of people who are like, I need to do this. It's good for the resume. I'm actually I have so many freelancers. I have so many artists. I have so many that I don't have very many like career girlies in my group. Whereas I assume that you probably do have more of that. So like the idea of like building a resume, I have a portfolio, we call it a portfolio, right? Like what the work that we've done as freelancers versus somebody who is on a career path that is, I started off as a junior, then I became an associate, then I became a manager, and the director, and then VP. There's still so many career opportunities, or a path for people that it's built into the job title that you have, or the one company that you work at. You can make your way to the top. I don't know that life. I'm not around that life very often, and every time I interact with people who have that life, I'm like, wow, I'm not jealous. I'm not jealous. But I think that it's a personal risk. Everyone you have to manage.
It totally is. And by the way, I take no offense to that or anything. I'm not even sure it's right for me. But I will say that the opposite of that, as being somebody who's not sure what they're doing next Wednesday or the following Wednesday, I've just never been that kind of person.
I just am also thinking about like people who are listening who are like, okay, if this is an episode about career paths or careers, it's like, what do you have advice? Do people ever ask you for career advice?
Oh, all the time.
What do you like? What's the big question that you always get asked?
First thing I say is like, don't ask somebody else for, what is going to make you feel whole. So I don't begrudge somebody saying like, how did you get here? What did you do? Or like, I'll be happy to share all of my experiences, but like, don't ask me what's best for you 10 years from now, right? Just find forks in the road and make the very best decision that you can. And I think what you'll find is that when you look in the rearview mirror, that's the career that unfolds. It's the result of all those decisions. You had one or two or three options. You chose the one you thought would fit you best, and you definitely fucking learned something from it. I mean, because I haven't always chosen the best one, right? I haven't always chosen the one in hindsight that I should have chosen. That was equally valuable, just in a different way that I would not have appreciated. So I guess what I'm saying is probably nothing new, but like, it's not linear. It's not linear. Think about what you want from your life and what's available to you and chase that.
Yeah, it's not linear. That's true. So true on the entrepreneurial side too, where it's like, man, you might think that you've hit a level that you've unlocked and that you can never go backwards, and then you get knocked back backwards.
Complete fucking pay dirt, right? Like, I mean, I'm reminded of, I have a really, really dear friend who is in her like mid to late 60s, right? She was like OG New York. She was in the printing industry in Union Square, where you couldn't have a printing press anymore, right? North end of Union Square. And for years, like their commissions, they were just like, forgive the pun, printing money, right? Like truly, there was like, their Christmas parties were, let's just say, decadent.
Dude, I miss corporate Christmas
parties.
All
the things. And then one day it was like, oh, nobody needs to fucking print shit anymore. And these people no longer have a job, and now they're working on negative, like on a draw, negative commission. And so I just mean to say that like, shit changes, right? Like your luck from one thing to the next, by design or otherwise, can totally, totally change. Just make the best decision you can for yourself in that moment.
I recently had a call with somebody asking for career advice. And I always like to take those calls because I'm like, what do you think I can offer you? Like, there's a little bit of
you're the village elder now.
Like, what do you want? A little bit, just because I'm like, me? Like, what do you want? I'm in a struggle. Like, I'm in the hustle. It's always interesting when people have a perspective on your career that you don't have for yourself, of like, no, you've done well. Like you're successful. If you think about yourself, do you define yourself as like a successful person?
When I stop and think about it, and like, the quiet moments of my life, and I look around at like family, home, jobs, cushion in a bank account or something like that, I think, yeah, how could I possibly ever dream that I would do better than this in life? In the moment, it's the hustler in me that makes me not settle for that being a success, right? I guess I wouldn't have any of that if I was a person who always was like, well, this is good enough, right? So I'm constantly a grinder in my own way. It drives Abby crazy because she's Midwestern and has a much better relationship with happiness and shit like that than I do. So it drives her crazy, but she also understands it's kind of what powers me.
Well, what I admire about you also is that you have such a balance between family life and prioritization of family versus career. And like, when we talk about the state of the pod, there are times where you're like, no, I can't do that. The kid's schedule doesn't allow that. And
That's
I'm
a
like,
new thing for me.
I'm like, what? I was like, who cares?
Yeah,
like, send them out. Send them. Well, they'll walk home. They're fine.
It's a new thing for me. I went to, especially pre-COVID, but even during and after, I went through a lot of times where like very commonly Monday through Thursday at least, I wasn't home in time to see the kids go to bed, right? And so kind of on one hand, no big deal. On the other hand, you're like, fuck me, man. What am I even doing this for? Right? So no, it came up the other day. You were like, hey, can we do a pre-pro at 6:30? And I'm like, I'm in the middle of cooking the kids dinner, and that's a non-negotiable for me.
It's been interesting. I obviously respect it, but it's been interesting that I'm like, as somebody who wants kids, I'm like, this will prevent me from doing some shit. This will slow me down from the pace that I'm used to. Because there's truly, I'm like, push through.
The only lining on that, I call it silver for now, is that you'll want to do that.
Of course.
Right? Like there's a difference. Like Abby will tell you, there was a time in my life when I felt like I was sacrificing one thing for the other, And in more recent times, the last 2 years, I'll say, I always say, like, the dad's the last one to join the family. I've just joined the family. Abby's been doing this forever. She's tired and ready to get off the fucking treadmill.
Well, and that's a testament to her because Abby's killing it with her career.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the reminder.
I am curious if there are any regrets with your career path.
Oh, sure. But nothing major. Nothing major. Like, you can always look in hindsight and say, well, should I have stayed there longer, left there sooner? Should I have pivoted to a different job in a very good organization? Yeah, but I don't get twisted about all that stuff. I think if anything, I'm right where I'm supposed to be right now.
Yeah. That saying is kind of how I feel right now. It's like, I am proud of the work that has been done. But I feel like Lady Gaga with her disco stick. Like, she did this thing called Gaga Vision, which was like a little YouTube channel that she produced. And she said on one of the early ones, she was like, everybody, all the reporters were like, what's your disco stick? Tell us about your disco stick. Like, that's all they were harping on. She's like, I'm so over that. She was like, if you knew what was coming down the road, like what my mind is expansive and has the ability to do and what I'm gonna show you, you'd stop asking about the fucking disco stick. I feel the same way about my career. I'm like, I'm happy and perfectly fine with what I've done. But if you have any idea of what's coming down the pike, like at least what I think I'll be able to execute against, that's going to be so fun to show people. It is very interesting. Like, I think we're both going through things that are emblematic of the industry change right now. And we're part of the ecosystem at different parts of it. You at one side, me on the other side. But I think it's absolutely critical to go through this. I don't like it. I don't like the uncertainty of where it's leading necessarily, that I was doing okay on my little, formulaic, I know how to do this. But at the same time, I don't regret any of it. And I'm excited to see what's on the other side of it. Yeah. What advice would you give to, like I said, somebody moving here in 2025, young Frank, going to be an actor for a week, and all the things that you've gone through? I'm not super quick to give that advice because I think it's like, advice is like such a broad. So you're a gatekeeper? No, what I would tell people is like, I remember I actively was very proud about like, I'm not very patient when I'm young in terms of like, I want everything now. Like I was very that. Turns out I'm one of the most patient people, and that I actually have such, like, for instance, we're talking about the growth of the pod or like having things happen because of the pod. I'm like, we're cooking. Just let it cook. My ideas have been so big that I've understood that it's going to take a second to communicate them, to build the infrastructure, to produce, and to publish. Like, it's going to take a while on a lot of my ideas. And so you have to have patience if you want to have a career with big wins and big public projects. Stay in the game. And it's incredibly an emotional ride, and the pendulum swings from side to side of the wins are wins and the losses are losses. But stay in the game until you decide to like balance it with family or get out of it. But so many people bail before it gets good. If somebody told me that this entire path was going to be what it has been, I would still choose it, but with much more caution. I went into this career path very blindly, and I fell backwards into things. And like, I'm so excited to do the work that I do. I love the work that I have. And when I do think about future stuff, I'm no longer planning like, and that's got to get done tomorrow. No. You asked me where I wanted to be in 14 years from now. I could tell you what that dream is. And I could tell you that there's no way that I could achieve that dream tomorrow. And so learning how to properly gauge how long things are going to take, that is a very helpful, calming thing.
Yeah, and a shortage of it. Patience is a good one. Mine is adjacent to patience, which is, trying to think of a single word, but like, pay the fucking dues, like study at the feet of a master, right? Whatever your craft, whatever it is you're doing, including some of the people we've spoken to on this couch, right? Study at the feet of a master, because you can get, and I'm sure I've gotten some of them, but you can get some wins along the way that you might not be ready for. But eventually what happens is the work, the content, the situations catch up, and you realize, even though I'm in this role, I wasn't quite ready for it because I didn't follow the path of understanding people who came before me and how they did this thing or how they did that thing. You know, I did it a lot as a graphic designer. I was more of an intern, and I certainly did it as a cycling coach, studying at the feet of like some real masters, people that are like famous in that subculture. But I'm not sure that I've ever done that or had the opportunity to do it at an executive level. And I wished I would have. I wished both. I wish I probably had more of the humility plus curiosity. And I wish I would have identified one person. I could be like, hey, will you just fucking, can I, read your notes, man? Anything, you know?
Well, and there's also the cliche of like, you're not going to do this alone. Like any of the biggest things that I've done have been with teams of people. And I think the core of any good team is kindness. Like, especially in our world where you're on set 18 hours, you're doing stressful work, high stakes work with clients and stuff. And a lot of money is being spent and a lot's on the line. Remain polite, like be calm, like be nice, like because during those times, you can't fall apart like a crew member being nasty or talent being snippy. Like, no, you will never get booked again. Like, be kind. Like,
so much of it is reputational, right? I mean, that's why we work together, because you are able to stay cool under the collar. Is that the expression?
I don't know, but I like
you're able to stay cool in those situations in a time when, like, first of all, the perspective is we're going to work on shit together again. So let's not all lose it on this one, right? And secondly is like, it's not ideal. We didn't plan for this, but we'll find a way through. That comes with skill and experience, I think, and the courage of your conviction.
I love when it's just us.
Yeah.
I like when we can deep dive into some stuff. But no, I mean, overall, like, let's keep going with the pod. Let's keep...
Oh, we should keep doing it?
No, I mean, like, do another couple episodes.
That's what I meant.
Oh, I thought you meant like right now.
I thought this was
we're wrapping up right now.
I thought this was our farewell episode.
No, not at all.
This has been so fun. It was great getting to know you a little bit.
Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Bye, Francis.